to rightfully be called a sword. It was larger, thicker, heavier, and cruder than any normal blade. By all accounts, it was no more than a hulking mass of iron.
And welcome back to another episode of ASMR DumpStat. It is your host, me, Arch Lich Brill, and of course next to me is the wonderful 12th level, I can't say that word, level fighter Doc. You weren't here with us last week. We missed you.
Yes, I know. It's a really terrible thing being missed like this.
Oh.
But you know, now that we're getting into this, I feel much better being here.
Here's the worst part. Your whisper kind of sounds like Batman, like a little bit. Like it has the raspy bit to it. You gotta get low.
Where are the drugs going? Where are the drugs going?
You gotta get low, but you also have to be very, very kind of smooth with it. Batman gets the gravel in his throat. So today I noticed that you have come to me with a spell tome that is 100% wrong.
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? One of the wizards that I was with, before all of my co-patriots died and you turned them into zombie minions.
Yeah, you can still hear them if you listen closely.
Frickin' Jerry the wizard.
Jerry the wizard. That's what we're going with. Okay, Jerry the wizard.
And Jerry was kind of a useless piece of crap, right?
Oh, okay.
And
sounds like a wizard.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, you had Fildamore, the wizard, in our party, and I know that you've made him into his own demon lawyer for yourself.
I've spread his eye jelly on my toast or whatever Shrek says.
Which, by the way, I know this is a quick side tangent, but
yeah.
For feedback from last time we talked about liches and stuff, I had a guy named James reach out to me and mention that he thought that having a lawyer devil was a really good minion idea for a lich, and I was like,
"Oh, that's cool!
Gosh, dang it, you're a genius."
that fits in the line of what I mean. All devils are kind of lawyers in D&D to begin with,
right?
Not to completely make fun of lawyers, but that kind of attitude towards contracts.
Right, but think like Satan, but with a comb over, and he pops up with a pen, and he's like, "Oh, hey, you're looking for a new RDR8 today? Well, I tell you what, with this pack of paperwork, we can get you down here lickety split with 500%
lichity split.
Yeah, lichity split. It's my tagline. Yeah. So thank you, James.
It's funny that he mentioned that. I actually had one other thing I wanted to talk about the Lich episode as well.
Okay.
That someone immediately brought up to us, which I thought was fantastic. I forget their name because I don't love them. By the way, I should also mention we also had another guy, me and Alaric, or as I like to call him, Better Doc, had a discussion about, kobolds in general. And we had somebody in the comments try to explain lycanthropy to us and why the were-weasel thing is not only possible, scientifically, but also makes sense in the wider D&D world. And I want people to tell us, do you want my 3-hour were-weasel episode? Because I have way too much information on that now.
Let's do it.
But stepping back, someone for the actual Lich episode mentioned that in Rim of the Frost Maiden, the next module that's going to be coming out from Wizards of the Coast, there is a new legendary item that, of course, Chris Perkins put out, and it's definitely one of those magic items to make people, wow, ooh, ah, type of thing. But it's the Scroll of Summoning Tarask. It is,
yes.
It is so
scary.
It is so exactly what it sounds like. And by the way, it's so exactly what it sounds like to the point where you think it's a homebrew item.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I saw this in homebrew circles of people going, "What's the strongest monster there is? A Tarask. Well, let's summon it."
Right.
Something along those lines.
And there's no caveats to it.
Nothing.
I mean, You may
You
be
make a Tarrasque.
Dear listener, when you're listening to this and thinking, oh, Chris Perkins wrote something, it's probably balanced and very well written. How could this scroll of Tarrasque summoning be balanced? Is it like, oh, a Tarrasque shows up for like 1d6 turns? Does it show up for a minute? No, a Tarrasque shows up. End of story. It's done. There's now a Tarrasque where your campaign is a science fantasy setting when you're on board the Nostromo, getting hunted by the alien. Guess what? You summon a Tarrasque. It doesn't matter. It shows up. Oh, it's great. It is fantastic.
It's not one of those items that you look at and you go, oh, it's balanced, or oh, this is what I think a serious campaign needs. This is something that you give, first of all, this is something that you give a level 1 party. I'm just going to say it right there. I know that sounds like terrible advice. You give it to a level 1 party, or your lich, by the way, but move that aside. You give this to your level 1 party, you say, down the road, if you're ever in deep shit, here is a piece of paper that will make Godzilla show up. That is how you play D&D with chaos. Okay, that is true murder hobo, and you'll learn whether or not your party is murder hobos as if they go to the first shopkeeper and the shopkeeper doesn't want to give them a deal and they summon the Tarrasque. That's how you tell what kind of party you're dealing with. Or if down the road they do a dramatic throw on the ground and it shows up.
Yeah. And could you imagine a campaign where like you give it the scroll to the party on the first session and second session it's stolen? Like what kind of stuff you'd have to wade through to like find out what happened and what's going on with that, like this hunt.
That's a good plot hook.
Yeah. I mean, like, because it's like, okay, who's got this, right? Who's hunting down this? Someone might be trying to get it as a collector's item. Someone may be trying to get it as like a threat, to like saying like, hey, you need to stop this war with us or we're just going to drop this nuke on your kingdom, right? Like all sorts of things could happen with that. And I think that'd be really a cool plot hook to give that to level 1 party, give them responsibility and immediately take it away and just be like, deal with it.
You failed miserably. Yeah, I find it funny because it's the first legendary item I've ever looked at, and with the entire internet, me and the internet just looked at it and said, this belongs to level 1 party members. Like, this isn't something that I want to give to a higher level person who might be able to handle the situation that they brought on themselves. No. They have to be level 2. They just leveled up. They're feeling good. They killed a goblin. They're feeling strong, and then they use it.
I'm starting you guys at level 0 commoners, and you find this while digging a field.
You find this.
Yep.
You find a pig was chewing on it while you were on the farms.
Yep.
But either way, I think that that's just a fun aside to our other episodes. And if you want to listen to those other episodes where all good podcasts are made, you can listen to us over on Spotify, iTunes, Buzzsprout as well. Mm-hmm. Anywhere you can find us on social media, IGN. Oh my God. Instagram. Are we on IGN?
I don't
We're just
think
reviewing games.
Let me tell you about Assassin's Creed. The new Valhalla game didn't have enough Odin.
9 out of 10.
Yeah. We're also at GameStop. So those are... There's such a groan.
I'll give you $2 for that review. How about that? That's
okay. That's wonderful. That's more than I thought I'd make. So those are all past episodes that you can look at. We just did Liches about 2 weeks ago when this is coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And last week we did a full Kobold episode, like I mentioned.
Yeah.
And this week, besides all that preamble, we are going to be looking into a very bad spell tome.
Right.
This is what happens when, like you said, a wizard only puts together the worst spells and how to fix them. Because we want to not only be a helpful sort, despite Drop the Intelligence being DumpStat's tagline, to those players and DMs who are going to come across certain spells and go, what the fuck is this? I want this better.
Mm-hmm.
And tweaking things is part of the game.
Yeah, and we asked our online community. I'm not sure if you know that you have a bunch of online followers, Mr. Lich Arcbridge.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, I know.
No.
Well, they don't realize that they're probably in line to be part of your phylactery, but we'll talk about that another time.
That's true.
But yeah, they wanted to know what the heck was in Jerry's spell tome. And I tell you what, I've got it open here, and there's a lot of spells in here, okay? And there's a lot of bad spells in Jerry's spell tome, but there's a couple that he used frequently that were just, useless, and I never understood. So,
like Fireball.
It's right. Yeah, Fireball is completely useless. But we're going to go through some of these spells, and we're going to talk about them, right? Just bat them back and forth a little bit.
Okay.
You're the professional lich, right?
That's true.
Me as a fighter, I've got some practical ideas of how to fix these. But you as an actual spellcaster, I hope, would have some ideas of how you can maybe, I don't know, change the magical components with them a little bit to maybe make them more effective.
That's true.
Like homebrew some of this stuff to make it a little bit better, if that sounds good to you.
Oh, don't you worry.
Yep.
I got this in the bag. You got it.
Let's talk about some of this stuff.
Okay, so first, top of the ticket.
Okay, so first, this is going to come as no surprise to anybody. It's True Strike.
Yeah.
So
it's called a help action, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. And I was actually talking to, do you know John? I don't want to say his last name on here, but my buddy John.
Yeah, I do. I intend to feed him again to my phylactery.
Oh, great.
Milk him for his soul.
I was actually talking with him a little bit, and we talked about this, and he mentioned, too, the help action as a good alternative to this. But let's talk about True Strike, right? It's a cantrip.
Right.
It's a concentration for 1 round, which is the weirdest thing to have concentration on, but whatever. Casting time of 1 action, range of 30 feet. What you do is you point your finger at a target within 30 feet, and the magic grants you a brief insight into the target's defenses. On your next turn, you gain advantage on your first attack roll against the target, provided that the spell hasn't ended. So if you get hit and you lose concentration in that time, you lose the spell. There's a couple of things that are wrong with this spell, right? First off, concentration, right? You could completely waste your action casting this, and then you get hit. Oh, great. Now you don't have this anymore. So completely wasted. Second, from a mathematical standpoint, gaining advantage on an attack roll is not as effective as having 2 separate attacks, right? Attacking the first turn and attacking the second turn, you have a mathematical better chance of hitting that person than if you attacked with advantage.
Right.
Just another thing is that it's on a self-cast, right? It doesn't help other people.
Yeah.
And it just helps yourself, right? So
right.
A lot of weird stuff going on with this.
Yeah, and I see a lot of excuses for it just on the basis of it being a cantrip.
Mm-hmm.
My counter to that argument that I hear a lot is if you're an early play party and you are looking through the cantrip list as a new player, I think that this is an easy trap to fall into, yes. And taking that as a cantrip, and then you're just stuck with it. I think most early players are looking for cantrips that are going to help them out. If you're level 1, 2, 3, you're going to need cantrips to kind of support you through a lot of that early campaign.
Yep.
Later on, you're going to get wild shit. So that's not really the issue. It's when you're fighting the goblin horde that you really need some of these cantrips to come through.
That's true.
Not to mention the aesthetics of the spell. I like the idea of examining a target's kind of whole persona for weakness.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool concept. Mathematically, it doesn't work out well for you, but the actual idea of it, I think, is a cool idea. And that's something that I would, at least aesthetically in play, try to keep going forward, because I like the idea of a player kind of doing the Terminator vision and looking through, seeing it's got a squeaky breastplate. Maybe I can get a sword in through there. I think that is
absolutely
cool. But the actual math, as you mentioned, is abysmal.
So in order to fix some of these issues, I have a couple of suggestions, right? There's a couple of ways that we can fix this.
Okay.
One, it's not really a fix, but it's a different way to use the spell, right? and I've actually read this online. I think it was at Absolute Tabletop on their Facebook group. So kudos to them. I forget who said this specifically, but if you recognize yourself, put yourself into the comments. We'll throw your name into the description of the podcast. I appreciate this idea, but give it to a boss monster, right? Like when you're playing an MMO and you see there's the red rain that pops out from underneath the guy, and you see this charging attack kind of like stowing up, and you know that this next attack is going to hit really hard. That's exciting, right? So it's fun to have a bad guy, right? A big bad guy who is standing right next to your wizard, and all of a sudden you say, as the DM, he's using True Strike. Then everyone's like, oh no, hit him, because if not, he's going to obliterate this guy, right?
Right.
That's fun. That's fun to build up tension.
So one idea for fixing this spell is to hand it off to a boss monster. I can see that. Mm-hmm. But what in ways of the actual player that might be touching this spell?
Sure. So there's a couple of things that you can do from like an actual, hey, let's change this spell homebrewing sort of thing.
Right.
First, bonus action, right? That's a powerful bonus action. But
yeah,
you can a concentration bonus action, right? If you can't use a spell or anything else on that turn with that. So you would have to do like a regular attack or something else with your regular action and then cast the cantrip as a bonus action.
Okay.
With concentration, if you get hit, it drops. But if you survive with that, hey, then you've got advantage on a next attack. So I still think, even though it would be a little OP, maybe for your table, depending on who's at it, give it a shot, right? Change it to a bonus action.
It's already doing part of the act of a help action. So it's putting a help action as a bonus action, which I don't think is all that OP in the grand scheme of things. I think inevitably it's starting to cross that valley from cantrip to level 1 spell, and it's still kind of in the gray area. I bet there will be DMs that would absolutely disagree with me depending on what kind of magic campaigns they run, because if they're running something that is very melee heavy, this is going to help.
Right.
If they're just doing your classic kind of Dungeons and Dragons spell diving, I don't know if it's necessarily a level 1 spell yet. I think the way to make it a level 1 spell from here is if you were able to put it as a bonus action and then give it to other people.
Right.
I feel like those two things is where it crosses over from being a cantrip over to being a level 1 spell.
Right. And I completely agree. Being able to give it to other people is an absolute must, right? Give it to yourself or give it to other people. Help actions, as of right now, you can only give them to other people. You can give them for attacks, not just skill checks. That's something that I actually had to correct on myself today.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't realize that you could do it for attacks, but you can.
I knew that one because I'm a wise person. But no, it's a very helpful thing for a party.
The thing about help actions, though, is I believe it has to be someone within 5 feet of you, right? And it only works for that turn. It's not, until the next attack or, next turn. It's only for that turn. And it has to be to other people. So True Strike can mix that up a little bit, right? So 30 feet, right? If you can cast basically a help action within 30 feet and you can give it to yourself instead of another person, that's useful. That's cool. Because now you're not just...
Right. No, that's way more useful.
Right. And if you tag that up with making it a bonus action instead of just an action, then you're kind of dealing with okay, so now I'm not taking away from someone else's action economy to, get this benefits and other things. I think keeping concentration is important, but I think in the current state of the spell, concentration just even makes it worse. So if you're going to do anything, I think you do need to keep concentration, but I think that you need to change some of the other ways that True Strike works. I was thinking, what would happen if we took away concentration? It'd be okay. It's still bad, so
it's still not great.
Right. But I think if you modify some of the other things, it gives it a little bit of a risk reward sort of thing. That's a little bit more higher reward instead of just all risk.
Sure.
So I kind of liked that aspect of keeping the concentration in there no matter what, but that's also just me.
Well, I mean, as the spell stands right now, the concentration for me, like you've already mentioned, doesn't make sense because concentration mechanic wise is a dampener for what you're doing. It's supposed to make things weaker. So if you do something if you have a spell that is awesome and powerful and you get cosmic genie level bullshit from it, the reason why they attach concentration to it is so that people can take you out of that state and it doesn't feel that, forced. The problem with putting concentration on there as it is right now is that you have a trash spell and then you put a weird caveat on top of that. How many cantrips require concentration?
Not many.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing. You have this bad spell, and then you decide to, on top of that, put the thing that puts the spell in chains, quote unquote. It puts the spell in a possibility of stopping said spell. So, as a new player, I mean, it's almost one of those spells that you kind of have to warn new players about when they look through their cantrip list if you're helping them build a character. Because it's not going to help them.
I'm looking now just on D&D Beyond. Thanks, guys. And most of the concentration spells, you have Create Bonfire, Dancing Lights, Guidance, and concentration for these either make sense or are a good dampener. Guidance definitely makes sense, but that's not always going to be used in combat.
Or it's never going to come up. Dancing Lights having concentration. Who is going to hurt you when you're making dancing lights? You make dancing lights in a tavern, in a bar, when you're trying to impress a young maiden. That's what you use dancing lights for.
Yeah.
It's not even, there are spells that we use for light in caves. It's not dancing lights.
Right.
So I don't know.
Yeah. No, so I think making True Strike concentration in its current state doesn't make sense. I think if you do modify True Strike to make it better, keeping concentration is going to make it cool, right? In the sense of there's some risk and reward. Now it's just kind of this is just a really bad spell.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where it is right now.
Yeah. So definitely consider some of those things of, changing if you can give it to somebody else, if you can cast it as a bonus action, some stuff like that.
And like you mentioned, this is not a new spell that everybody knows is bad.
Right.
Everybody has their opinions on it. There's YouTube videos on it. There's whole Reddit threads on it. You can look out past us to see what could work for you. These are just our, suggestions.
Yeah.
All right. So what's next?
All right.
We fixed that one.
Yeah, we fixed that one. So off the
100% knocked it out of the park.
Okay. So let me see here. All right. Give me just...
Gotta open up the spell tome.
Yeah. So, next one, Witch Bolt. And this one hurts me because I personally like Witch Bolt, but I kind of agree that there's something about it that makes it a bad spell. Right.
Lesser, yeah.
And so let's talk about what makes it bad. A beam of crackling blue energy lances out towards the creature within range, forming a sustained arc of lightning between you and the target. Make a ranged spell attack against the creature. On a hit, the target takes 1d12 lightning damage, and on each of your turns for the duration, which is 1 minute, so 10 turns, you can use your action to deal 1d12 lightning damage to the target automatically. The spell ends if you use your action to do anything else. The spell also ends if the target is ever outside the spell's range or if it has total cover from you. Now, here's a couple things of why this spell is a little bad, right?
Right. A little bad.
I like the thematic forming of the spell, and it's a good spell for lower levels, but it gets
the aesthetics are great.
Yeah, it's much more terrible as you get to higher levels.
Unlike True Strike, Witch Bolt, I actually know players who have used it, so there's that.
Yeah, that's fair. So first is range area of 30 feet, right? So let's say you have a guy, it's a ranged attack, right? So first off, if you're within 5 feet of this guy and you do Witch Bolt, then it's at disadvantage. So if this guy, you probably are going to be like having at least 5 feet in between you and this other person. So they're going to be at least 10 feet away from you. So what do they do on their turn when they get hit by Witch Bolt? They run 30 feet behind them and they go outside of that area and the spell ends. Done.
Right.
That's sad.
Yeah, it is a little bit sad. I also think that there is the weird, because we just mentioned about concentration spells, which bolt is concentration, correct?
Right.
Almost 100%, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So there's already that issue with concentration spells that if you use one of them, you want bang for your buck. And I know this is a level 1 spell. However, if you are going to use it, there are people who are going to go, wait a minute. You can basically go your movement speed away from my lightning?
Yep.
What the fuck?
Yep. So, yeah, that sucks. And also the damage scaling, right? Because when I first read the spell, I was like, oh, that's cool. So, like, as the spell goes up, when I do, a 3rd level spell slot, I'm doing 3d12 lightning damage and then 3d12 lightning damage each turn. But that's not the case. You do, from the wording, 3d12 lightning damage on your first turn, and then the subsequent turns, you do 1d12 lightning damage.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh, that's bullshit.
Yes.
Oh, no.
So.
Oh, no.
It's a common misreading, but it is the correct reading of that rule.
Damn.
And so
I did not know that.
I know. It's so sad.
Oh,
so
that's so bad.
That's why this spell sucks in that regard. So womp womp. And then also if the
womp womp.
if the target also dives behind full cover for like a split second, the spell ends. Right. So if there's like a bunch of pillars running around and stuff, then
so not only you can,
he just has to basically run past a tall pillar that covers him completely, and that witch bolt ends connection. Right. So that sucks.
So either when you're fighting somebody, they can dive behind cover and there's almost always cover, or on top of that, they can just go their movement speed if you're in open air space.
Yep.
The only way you could really use this spell is if you're in tight quarters with another person and then you're using lightning, so it's going to burn down the house.
Right.
Like there's not really, unless you're in a tomb, confined space, the monster is like 10 feet away from you and then it can hurt you.
Yep.
Damn, there's not a lot of good places to use this thing.
Yep. But what's nice, though, is that this is one spell that I have personally worked on and homebrewed a little bit and changed how it works to make it better. So I have some ideas of how to do that.
Okay.
That are actually, pretty consistently play tested. So this is probably the most play tested spell on this list for me.
Alrighty.
First thing, range. Change it to 60 feet. Right?
Yeah.
That now, so you hit somebody for, if you cast this 3rd level, 3d12 lightning damage at 50 feet. Yeah, they can run away from that, sure. And that makes sense at that point, right? Like they want to be like, I don't want to take this. And they run 15 feet back and then 15 feet forward. A good control spell at that point. If someone's within 10 feet of you, they're going to have to start running and really run quick to get away from you.
Right.
And so they either have to use their full action to basically dash and get away from you, or something else. So adding that extra 30 feet to the range actually does make it a little bit more tactical to use, which makes it a lot more interesting.
It makes more sense. Yeah.
It's like I now have a zone of control for this person within 60 feet, and if he's 60 feet within me, I'm going to chase him out from 60 feet. That is interesting, instead of it being like, well, yeah, he just has to take a step back and then step forward again, which is what it feels like with 30 feet. I don't know. And depending on the game, maybe boost it to 120, Next, my personal thing that I think is an easy fix is damage stealing, right?
Okay.
Maybe make the repeating damage the same as the damage as it increases, right? Instead of the initial damage increases by 1d12, make it the damage increases by 1d12 for each spell slot, right? Just make it repeating damage 3d12, right?
When you use a spell slot, there is that idea that you are using something that is a finite resource. So when you use a spell, you want it to be the most effective that you can, at least from a player's perspective. If you use something at a higher spell slot and you use up that spell slot, then there's definitely going to be people who go, what the fuck? So I think this fix is absolutely 100% warranted and what is actually good for the spell.
Yes. Now, I know some people have criticized the damage scaling when I say like, oh, just increase it by, whatever the 1d12 thing is, where it's like, well, no attack roll on the repeats damage is a little insane when you're doing 5d12 per damage. And I would say, you're right. That is a little insane. So So how about you change that to, if you're comfortable with it, by like half. So you tested at level 4, your initial damage is 4d12, make the repeating damage 2d12, right? Round up, round down, figure out what's going on with your players, right? If what they like, what they don't like about the damage scaling, right? Make it work for your table.
I could imagine a DM looking at it and going, well, increasing the damage even at a higher spell slot might really fuck up a monster just because lightning damage is not something that normally things have resistance to.
Right.
So I could see that argument maybe, but I think as is what you've proposed is probably the better way to do it. I do have one question though about the spell once you're done.
Sure. I think that's about it. I think the concentration, I think that should also stay. The other thing that you could do is instead of this other stuff, you could also change as an action, you can deal 1d12 lightning damage on subsequent turns. Do it as a bonus action. That's another option for you to do to make it stronger. Personally, I've done it where I've changed the damage and I've changed the range and I've changed doing it as a bonus action on subsequent turns. And I think it actually gets too powerful at that point. So for me personally, and in my games, I tend to leave it as an action. But if you don't like damage scaling, if you don't like some of this other stuff, maybe just change the subsequent turns as a bonus action so then your character can do other things. That helps with some of the other stuff, because then they can maneuver, they can do all this other things. But that's my suggestions for this one.
My only question that I have is, would you change the components to the spell, or would you keep them the same?
Components. Let's see what the components require. A twig from a tree that has been struck.
Yeah.
Okay, so a twig from a tree that has been struck by lightning. So that is a good thought. I mean, if you're a DM, that requires like your players to really search to find this stuff. It is a first level spell, and I know most DMs trying to say, hey, whatever you've got in your first level,
you got it. Yeah,
you got it, right? And a lot say that if it doesn't have a GP value, it doesn't like get expunged, right? I would say a twig. If you say that the resource gets used up when you cast the spell, I would say in its current state, make it a twig from a tree, not struck by lightning. Just make it a twig from a tree.
Oh wow. Okay.
I would say if you do increase the power of the spell, I would say do make it a twig from a tree that has been struck by lightning. When you're getting towards the end of your spell, if your guy ducks behind a tree, maybe that tree, gets struck by lightning from your witch bolt.
You got more.
Yeah, you got more.
You just made more, bro.
Yeah. It's Christmas, right?
You got more.
You just cast Witch Bolt.
Way to go. You're good for another 30.
Yeah, exactly. Or just have your, Storm Cleric or, just like Storm Barbarian just, hit a tree or something.
I think it's a component that on early levels is going to be where you have certain spellcasters go, where the fuck am I supposed to find this? And that depends what kind of DM you have. I think a lot of DMs for early play and for new players are just going to go, you got it. You were out in the woods one day. That's fine.
And whenever you invest in finding those components, you're going to create a really cool experience. I think with adjusting the spell to make it more powerful, in this case, it would make it something really enticing if you make Witch Bolt really good, that you have to have a journey in order to find those resources so that they can cast the spell again.
That is wonderful.
Yeah, I think it's really something cool when it's like, hey, like Fireball is naturally a really good spell, but maybe the components are really hard to find for it. So you can't just go around casting it all the time. That's a cool thing that I've found in games.
That's the initial idea behind components, but it's usually ignored by most DMs because like carrying weight and certain forms of exhaustion that you would probably get from a fight, a lot of stuff becomes a bit tedious in your fantasy game.
Yes.
At no point is there really a huge debate in the Lord of the Rings about how much, how many breakfasts the fucking hobbits are carrying.
Right.
There comes a point where you look at it and you go, we want to have fun. We don't want to do taxes. Spell slots by themselves, spell taxes, are enough on their own.
Speaking of like certain types of DMs and things, let's quickly go over a spell that I have never seen used.
Ooh.
And that's Purify Food and Drink. Never seen it used. Just never, right? So let's open this up real quick and talk about it. All right. Purify food and drink. All non-magical food and drink within a 5-foot radius sphere centered on a point of your choice within range is purified and rendered free of poison and disease. Instantaneous, but can be cast as a ritual first level spell.
Wow.
Okay, here's the deal. When would you use this?
Yeah.
The thing is, I know that there's games out there, and I'm sure people have used this before, all right? So I'm not criticizing your game if you do this in your game, but I'm saying that it's really only useful if you do this in your game. If you're running a game that's more realistic, and it's like, hey, you don't know if the king's food is actually, like, all that safe to eat, or, if, like, the pig that they slaughtered has some horrible disease in it, and you're going to die if you eat this maybe slightly uncooked meat, right?
Right.
You don't know if these chickens and eggs and flour are going to give you salmonella. You have no idea.
Right.
So the matter of the fact is that fixing this spell is tricky because it is useful very specifically as like flavor, pun intended, in a lot of cases. Like, the king has a wizard that uses purify food and drink on everything to protect the king from poisons and stuff like that. That makes sense that they would have, a court wizard or something that goes wubba 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 over all of the food.
Wubba wubba wubba.
Or a cleric who's blessing the meal and casting purify food and drink over it. That's a cool flavor thing, right? But it again, when are you going to use this practically, right? So how do you fix this spell? I don't really know. Besides changing your campaign to make it a little bit
useful,
tediously specific, tediously, careful and everything, I don't know. One thing that you could do is add like a reverse effect, and you could just call it food and drink, where you could maybe spoil the food as well as purify it.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
That might be interesting. Or you could say alter food and drink so that, it's like, okay, so you can either get rid of all of this stuff or you could age the food to where it's spoiled, something like that. So you're not just like, oh yes, this stuff is lethal now. Making it so that it's like, yeah, whoever eats this stuff is not going to be happy for the next 12 hours.
Right. I think what you mentioned on it being aesthetics is important. I think this is definitely one of those, I guess, spells that a person would take to make your character flush out more as its own person in a particular job.
Yeah.
However, you're right that it's probably not going to come up unless you, like you said, maybe make the range of the spell a little bit wider to spoil food and drink, or maybe it can, maybe you could do something a little bit more strenuous with the spell that would be akin to, there's a poison potion. Make that potion not poison, or make it fall into more of an alchemy sort of sense. But overall, looking at it, this is something that a DM would have to fit in as a spell to do something. And for me, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I think a person that takes this as an aesthetic spell, once that's actually used and once they actually get the chance to use that spell, I think that they would be extremely happy that one thing they wanted to do, they did it. That's about as far as it goes.
I completely agree. And so, no harm, no foul with this spell, but it's just like, it's just
it's small. It's small and weird and specific, and it works in D&D, but you're also like, I might see this used once in my career of playing. Like, I don't think I'm going to see this every campaign, which is kind of weird and a little bit sad.
Its existence is a very good world building thing.
Right.
The fact that it's like, hey, there's probably people that use this spell before royalty eat their food.
Right.
That's a cool world building tool that you can have. So it's like, why aren't these people worried about their food just getting poisoned all the time?
Well, they have this.
It's because they have this, right? And so its existence almost fills a hole that is it's not really meant to be used almost. It's meant to explain away some other details almost. So like, if you're building your campaign, be aware that this is a thing. But if you're a cleric deciding if you should take this one or not, talk to your DM and see if you can poison things with it. That would be my suggestion.
As an encounter, if I was a DM and you wanted to make sure that this spell was somehow useful down the road, the big bad has them for dinner. Strahd or whomever the big bad happens to be, that week, invites them over for a big old feast. And that's when the cleric or whomever actually has this spell goes, hang on a minute. And they start, and they try to purify it. But the issue with that is it can be cast as a ritual. So that also means that whenever you're purifying, it's not going to be subtle. So I think that's the other weird bit about the spell.
Unless if you just instant cast it,
right?
Which is like it's not super subtle, right?
No, you're waving your hands.
You still have a verbal and somatic.
You're at a dinner plate and you're looking down on it and you're like, hang on a minute, and the evil Baron gave me this, and you start going, oh Paylor, and you start doing a weird dance, and everyone's like, what the fuck is up with Jerry tonight? And then he's like, this shit is poison, and he flips the table. That's about as far as that encounter might go. But for the person who has a background as a noble and he was the guy who ate food for the king, like in his backstory, that one character, that player is going to look at this spell and go like, that's my shit. And then as a DM, as a good DM, it's always nice when you can take their backgrounds into the actual campaign and give them opportunities to shine. You want your players to shine. The more you know. So that's my only suggestion for that.
So we've been picking on lower level spells, right? And there's still a lot of spells that we could go over and stuff, but I want to pick on some higher level spells.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So let's go after one of the big guys. And we're going to go after a spell that's 9th level.
Okay.
And it's called Weird. So flip open the... So let's see. This spell is weird. Sorry. Let's see. All right, so Weird. 9th level, duration 1 minute, concentration, 1 action, range 30-foot radius. Drawing on the deepest fears of a group of creatures, you create an illusory creatures in their minds, visible only to them. Each creature in a 30-foot radius sphere centered on a point of your choice within range must make a wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, a creature becomes frightened for the duration. The illusion calls on the creature's deepest fears, manifesting its worst nightmares as an implacable threat. At the end of each of the frightened creature's turns, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 4d10 psychic damage. On a successful save, the spell ends for that creature. Now, this spell does not sound super bad at first, right?
No.
But and the higher level spells are going to be complicated, right? So let's go over some of the reasons why this spell isn't great. First, it's creatures within a 30-foot area. It's not creatures that you choose. It is creatures within a 30-foot radius that you choose the location of.
Of a range of 120 feet, yeah.
Yeah, so within 120 feet, you pick a spot, and then 30 feet of that spot is what gets affected. So if you're effectively surrounded by the King's Guard, and then you're like, nope, and you cast Weird on top of yourself, this is going to affect you, right? Which granted, at this point, you're going to be higher level, and so you're going to be, probably more able to save against this, but you're also running into an issue where your party members might not be able to make that save. And so, it's this back and forth of like, oh, well, is it worth it? If I'm casting this on top of my people, and I can't, affect that whole thing. Second, 4d10 psychic damage initially and on the end of each of the creature's turns. Sure, that's a decent amount of damage, right? At 9th level, though,
not that much.
There's better spells.
Yeah, there's spells that kill you, open up fucking interdimensional portals. There's 9th level. Yep. If we're talking 9th level, we're talking about the highest spells go besides, Wish. You know what I mean? Like, we're talking ridiculous shit.
Yep. And it's like, why not just do Wish and say like, I wish all these guys would leave me alone, and it's like, okay, and and they leave you alone, and then they attack all your friends because that's how people run Wish.
Because Wish is a monkey's paw.
Oh gosh, there are lower level illusion spells that can do similar things for more damage, and so it's like, why would you choose this as a 9th level spell when you could do one of the other 9th level spells which do way more damage? damage and to do other things to scatter people. That's my thinking, at least, with this. Another thing is, frankly, those creatures can make the save. They try at the end of each of their turns to make that save. And yes, they are frightened. That's cool. But it's just like, for a 9th level spell, it's very right? It's just like, okay, like, yeah, they take a decent amount of damage. Yeah, if you cast this on a bunch of town guards, they're probably gonna die in turn. But if you're, I don't know, in the abyss, in hell, wherever else that you probably are as a high level wizard.
Right. If you're using 9th level spells, you're doing higher level play, which means you're probably in some really deep shit.
Right.
And this feels very 7th level-ish, 6th level, 7th level-ish.
Yeah.
From the damage output and to the actual effect, and the fact how easy it ends for a person if you actually just get lucky on a wisdom save.
And it's concentration, which like which again, I know we're harping on concentration, but like,
we're just gonna shit on concentration.
Yeah, it's an spell with concentration. So like, why would you do that? So let's talk about some ways to fix this, right? First, an easy way to fix this. Drop concentration. Boom. It happens. You don't have to worry about it anymore.
Right.
Whether these guys get affected or not, you don't have to worry about that. It happens and it's done. And it lasts for a minute for whoever it is affected. That's cool, right? Okay, now you still have the problems with the damage and stuff like that, but since you don't have to worry about it per se, that makes it a lot better, actually. So being able to just drop it and say, yep, whoever's going to get hit by this gets hit by this is cool. Having to worry about, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to be able to cast other spells for 10 more turns while these people are freaking out until all of them stop freaking out and then I can cast something else. It's not cool. Just drop concentration on this spell. Just don't do it. Just get rid of it. Gone. Boom. Done. Okay. Second thing, creatures you choose. Easy fix, right? It just, if, you know, you get backed into a corner and there's people around you and then you summon this demon-looking thing that is trying to kill everybody and people around you just start running away, that's going to be a cool moment. When you scare the crap out of your barbarian friend, that's not as cool of a moment. So, creatures you choose, right? Let's just add that in there. I don't know. What are your thoughts? Where are you thinking as well with this?
Up the damage. I mean, we're talking 9th level spells, and I'm looking at this, it's illusion, right? Yeah, illusion spell. Mm-hmm. And illusion has always been the school of magic that has been shit on a little bit. I think it's because people don't know how to play it. It's very hard to be an illusion-based character or spellcaster. You have to really think. Every single one of your spells is a scheme, okay? So if you're an illusion-based character, you are constantly trying to deceive people. And that, over time, can not only wear thin, but you'll lose creativity behind it. So people start with it or leave it or aren't interested in it. So I look at weird and I see an illusion spell that has kind of been shit on kind of in the meta, in the overarching ways that a 9th level illusion should be.
Yes.
I think upping the damage is a big part of that.
Yes.
When I think of your deepest, darkest fear showing up to scare the shit out of you, it should melt your brain how scared you are of this fucking thing. Mm-hmm. You should be a shivering pile of nothing on the floor about how terrified that, you know, your aunt from 3rd grade showed up out of the ground with a dildo the size of Texas to beat the shit out of you. It should not be something that is just easy to overcome. I think that would be...
Brill, do we need to talk about your aunt? Is this,
Possibly. But I think that there's this, when you look at a spell that's 9th level, there's also expectation. Mm-hmm. I think players, when they think of the highest spells you can cast, they want to be summoning meteors. They want to be able to kill things instantly. They want ridiculous stuff because it's spells that not only do you never see used, but it's also spells that you're probably only going to get a few spell slots for to begin with.
Something else too about illusion spells, I actually really, really love illusion spells. And a lot of them give you the power to kind of do things with them, right? And that's a lot of the fun with illusion is like, oh, I'm going to make this thing appear to try and trick this person, or I'm going to try to persuade this person by changing the appearance this way. This spell is like, yeah, something scary shows up and does a mediocre amount of damage to them. It's like, that's not really fun. It's just kind of like, okay, okay.
Yeah, it's very 7th
Do
level.
something. Yeah.
Right.
This is going to be a very broad advice for the spell, but I think there's a lot of different ways that you can take it. So I want to keep it broad. Do something else with the spell. Have some other effect. One of the ideas that I personally had is if someone, quote unquote, dies from this spell, they get restored, back to, 10 hit points or something, and are temporarily under your control for the remaining duration of the spell, right? That would be kind of like, what the heck? That's like super crazy. Yeah, it's a 9th level spell. I think that would be cool. And it would be a cool way to kind of take control of minions temporarily. Also, just do something more with like flavor, right? Maybe you just completely ditch the whole 4d10 psychic damage thing and change it so that it's like it has drastic effects if someone falls for the illusion, right?
Right.
Like they are frightened and they will listen to you and do what you tell them.
Well, illusion in and of itself is a role-playing school of magic. It's not evocation. It's not necromancy. It's not something that is always going to come in a pinch when you deal with actual threats that are physical. Illusion is to trick people.
Yep.
So I agree with those that you just said. The two things that come to mind immediately is, and one of them you would absolutely have to balance down the road, but one of them is your deepest, darkest fear shows up and it chases you.
Yes.
You pick a few monsters and your deepest, darkest fear shows up and will chase you for a day or something like that.
Yep.
Like you have to run. You have to run for hours until you're exhausted and die. I think that's one idea.
I love that idea.
Like until your heart gives out. Or on the flip side, the other thing I would do maybe is up the damage, maybe keep the spell as is, maybe definitely choose people, but up the damage. And if you die, that character morphs into a gibbering mouther.
Ooh.
That is under the control of the player.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. Ooh.
Just something that also spreads madness and fear. Like there's so much panic and distress that goes into this one person that if they actually die from it, they morph into something that's an aberration.
Just imagine dropping this on a room full of kobolds. Like, and with that caveat of like, yep, if they die, they turn into gibbering mouthers. You just have like, oh, a room of 20 kobolds. Now it's a room of 20 gibbering mouthers. Like, oh my word, that is such a cool thought.
But that is also something closer to 9th level shit, because 9th level, as we mentioned, is the pinnacle. And this is kind of one of the pinnacles of illusion magic. So people want to see something that is not only tricksy, but also something that is overwhelmingly kind of daunting to deal with. If you're on the wrong side of a 9th level spell, dude, you better, dot your I's and cross your T's and hope to God that you're going to make it out of here. A 9th level spell is gonna hurt. It's supposed to hurt. That's kind of the premise, that a spellcaster has mastered a school of spellcasting and now has one of the trophies of that actual training. And weird should be that, and it's weird that it's weird, that it isn't that overwhelmingly. It just isn't that kind of spell. It really has a lot to be desired. And I know people have mentioned that, and it's funny that we went from cantrips this episode to like, let me tell you what's wrong with this spell that you're never going to be able to use because you're never going to hit that level, bro. Right. I find that to be a fun thing. I also like the idea if you change this spell and then you add it to maybe a lich or another spellcaster's spell list, if you change it up a little bit, it could be a fun add-on to a boss monster. Just the idea of a boss monster using your deepest, darkest fear to against the party, I think would be a really cool spell to give a lich or something.
Absolutely. I completely agree. All right. So it looks like that we probably have time for one more.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about a 6th level spell, right? Let's do this. This actually comes from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, which mostly has really good spells. But this one is... it's okay. It's not really that great.
It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine.
This is Tensor's Transformation. So I actually didn't really know about this spell. Again, it's one of those higher level spells. 6th level isn't that bad, but it's a wizard spell. You endow yourself with endurance and martial prowess fueled by magic. Until the spell ends, you can't cast spells, and you gain the following benefits. You gain 50 temporary hit points, and any of these remain where the spell ends, they are lost. You have advantage on attack rolls that you make with a simple and martial weapons. When you hit a target with a weapon attack, the target takes an extra 2d12 force damage. You have proficiency with all armor, shields, simple weapons, and martial weapons. You have proficiency in strength and constitution saving throws. You can attack twice instead of once when you take the attack action on your turn, unless if you can already do that for some reason. Immediately after the spell ends, you must succeed on a DC 15 constitution saving throw or suffer 1 level of exhaustion, right?
Wow.
So this is interesting, right? This is if your wizard is like going full barbarian, like, SpongeBob and Patrick entering the wrestling match and they tear off their shirts and they're just huge buff dudes, right?
Good reference, yes.
Yes. So here's the deal with this spell. It's concentration. I know, but like, imagine walking into a battle, right? Just geared up, ready to go, and then you get hit, and then you lose the constitution check, and all of a sudden,
I didn't even think of that.
You're wearing heavy armor as a wizard, so you can't cast spells anymore, even if you do, and then, you failed your constitution saving throw because you're a wizard, and now you have a point of exhaustion.
Wow.
So now you're standing in the middle of the field with heavy armor on, can't cast spells, and basically exhausted, and it's like, help. So let's talk about how to fix this.
Right.
Drop concentration.
Yep.
Just do it.
Just do it.
The fact that you can't cast other spells, I think that's a fine thing. You're gearing up for melee battle with this. It makes sense that you can't cast spells.
Right. This is when you have your character that's normally, a wizard or some form of spellcaster beefing himself up to go Super Saiyan so that he is actually able to go toe-to-toe with something, which is a cool role-playing moment, by the way.
Yeah. Just like, there's guys that, it's a fun spell to kind of have in your back pocket. And then, some enemies walk into the room and then your wizard's like, all right, guys, let's take these guys on. And the bad guys are like, but you're a wizard. And then you're like, oh, yeah, I am a wizard. And then it's just like, buff.
Gandalf with abs.
Yeah, exactly. So like, just drop concentration. Don't give yourself that stress. Just drop it, right? Get rid of it. Another thing, let's talk about armor. It takes time to put on armor. You can't just be like, armor. For heavy armor, it takes several minutes to put it on. It actually takes like 10 minutes, I think, to put on heavy armor by yourself. So if you cast this and then put on heavy armor, that kind of sucks. If you get into a bind and you're like, I need to use this right now, and you can't put on armor, then you're running around with like 12 AC or 11 AC or something. And, then that kind of sucks too.
Something disgusting.
Right. So here's the deal. Add a little thing, a piece of flavor, that when you cast this spell, you can don any armor immediately that is within 10 feet of you. Right?
Oh my God.
So Iron Man, right? Iron Man this, and just reach out your hands, cast transformation, and that, rack of armor hanging on the wall just straps to you. And then, you just hear, da, na, 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 just in the background as you're just, getting magic missile ready, even though you can't cast it. So there's that too, right? Where can you cast spells? Should you not be able to cast spells? I'm kind of like, I don't know, like, should you be able to? You're kind of wearing heavy armor and stuff. Maybe, like,
no,
maybe.
I'm of the opinion that this is a spell that's made to, again, don armor, go into battle.
Yeah.
I'd maybe up the force damage.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah, I'm considering that, but not by much, maybe like by a dice. But yeah, I think that there is that cool moment. This is a role play plot twist. This is something going Super Saiyan or becoming a superhero for a half minute.
Right.
I think that maybe just the fact that you're entering that arena, that you should maybe leave your bullshit at the door. But I agree. The concentration thing, man, that is out of all the spells we've talked about, that ruins this if you just get hit too hard, which you're gonna get hit hard.
Yep. It is more than likely that in that 10 minutes that you're going to get hit, it is statistically like almost impossible that you are not going to get hit. Even if you walk out there with a shield and plate armor, it's going to happen, right? It's a 1 in 20 chance for a critical hit. And if you get hit by a critical hit, imagine that save, right? Imagine that save when you're fighting things when you can cast 6th level spells. It's just like all these things just add up to where it's like, guys, drop the concentration. If anything else, just drop the concentration on this spell.
Just drop that.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. It's such an easy fix if you can do that. So please, for the love of God, drop concentration on this spell. And then it would be really cool. Like, even if you don't change anything else about the spell, this spell is just so great if you can just walk out there for however much time that you have with your 50 extra temporary hit points and just be that guy that everybody thought you wouldn't be, right? The guy on the front line just killing people. That is really cool.
Guess what, book nerd? You get to be the quarterback today.
Yeah, that's right. Oh man. So I like this spell a lot, but you need to drop concentration.
You absolutely do.
Matter of fact, please drop concentration on this for your players.
If you get your concentration dropped, and you're just Gandalf now in full plate, just you can't move, you're on the ground, you're crying, you're hoping that your party is going to save you, bro. Come on, why cast it in the first place? If that's gonna happen, which that's gonna happen, why would you do that to yourself?
Exactly. So drop concentration on it, and maybe add on the donning of armor immediately when you cast it. I could see cool. you don like armor, before you use it, and then you're like, but then you run into that issue where it's like, okay, but like you still have to you can't really cast spells technically while you're wearing heavy armor. So like, are you half wearing heavy armor and then you spend the rest of the 5 minutes? Like, just, you know what? Forget that I said maybe. Just make that a thing where you don the armor automatically. It's going to make it so much better.
That weird halfway of donning armor. When can I cast a spell? Does this mean that I can't cast the spell? I only have a gauntlet on. Is that okay? Right. How long does it take to don on plate armor? Apparently it's like a minute, like that whole, what if it's a quarter of the way on? Do I get 30 seconds? Like the whole shtick is really complicated. And it would also be cool in your suggestion about summoning just armor from someone. Right. What if a bad guy comes in, he's got heavy armor, and you just take it and put it on yourself?
That's awesome.
That'd be fun. He's naked. Now you've got his clothes.
Now I am the captain now. Yeah.
Dress for the job you want,
Right.
That's also cool. I could imagine. I don't know why my brain just went to this, but if you're fighting like, let's say the Githyanki, and you're out in the Astral Sea and you're shooting, all these certain fire bolts, and you're doing the spellcaster thing. Wouldn't it be cool though to sword fight? You think to yourself, and you're like, shit, I want to mix it up on this pirate ship in space. I want to do the treasure planet. And then you just take the Gith's armor, you put it on. Like, that's fun. And he's looking at you like, oh my God, what? Like that's a lot of fun, I think, for role playing. I think that's a cool moment. I think that players would love that. I personally think that this spell needs to be reworked because it's a great idea. I get the idea. It's just where the rules stand as they are right now at this moment. It doesn't make sense.
The changes that we've suggested on this one, and everything's a suggestion, right? Play the game the way you want it to play, change the rules how you want to change. But in my opinion, this changes this spell from being very hesitant, very like, I don't know, to just like awesome and fun. And that is a huge difference. That's going to be a moment that goes from incredibly risky and kind of like, oh, I'm kind of hesitant to use this spell or get into combat because if I get hit, I'm just going to be wrecked, to, hey, that was an amazing moment for your campaign that everyone's going to remember when that wizard for the first time whips this out. And it's just like, holy cow, it's John Cena.
Right. You can't be, this spell almost requires a certain form of fuck you confidence.
Yes.
And to not have that going in is really depressing.
Yeah.
To be a little squeamish about, I don't know, guys, I could get hurt. Like, no, this is, you become a boxing champion spell. You need to have that. You need to get the Captain America juice.
Yep.
I want you to be confident when you do it. And maybe take this complaint if you want to use this spell, because I think it's a great spell to use. Go to your DM, say, hey, here's my issue. Can we work together? And when your DM says no or is weird about it, share this episode and be like, listen to the whole thing, get to the end, and listen to us too.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah. All right. So, like, that's the main first pages of Jerry's spell book that I have here. But, there's definitely more spells on here. So
there's a lot more.
Right. So here's the deal. Everyone, including you guys, you who are listening, I imagine that you're going to have spells. It's like, but you didn't cover this. Well, these are just the spells that I found in the first few pages of Jerry's book. So I got a favor to ask you, right? I like doing this stuff. I like looking at spells. I like trying to think, how could we make this better? And I also like hearing how people have thought to make spells a bit better too, right? So here's a call to action. When you hear this episode, if you can think of a spell that you know a way to fix or you think is bad and you just want to hear us ramble about it for a bit, send us a message. Send the podcast a message, wherever that podcast is. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram.
We're on IGN.
We're on IGN, apparently. So find us, send us a message about it, and, I'll give a shout out to you, and we'll talk about it, because I'm sure it's in Jerry's spellbook here. So we'll definitely talk.
And we also have a mighty back catalog now of episodes. You can look back through Spotify, iTunes, and all good podcasts, blah, 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 where you can go through and see our different episodes. And if you like them, please download them. Please share them. I know download, it takes a minute on Spotify. Just a little click. It helps us out a ton. Subscribe to us if you love us. But if you find an episode and you're just like, that really just knocked it out of the park, give us a download.
Yeah.
Give it to your friends. It really helps us out. We love you guys. You guys have been awesome to us.
Indeed.
We have a long cleric lovely mini-series that we've been doing. We're like halfway through the thousands of cleric subclasses. We want to do another class-based mini-series, so please give us your suggestions on what class you would like us to cover next.
Yeah.
We also do this how to run thing. We've done liches. There's going to be a part 2 to that soon. We also have goblins, and we also have kobolds as minion races that we've also done for that. We have more abstract stuff. There's a lot of stuff.
Yep.
A lot of things that would, gotta use synonyms. There's a lot of things we've done and that you can go through our backlog and check out. So
absolutely.
Either way,
yeah.
Doc, as always, thank you for giving me your spells.
Yeah. And with all this stuff, are you going, well, you're welcome. With all this backlog, do you think you're going to be keeping me alive for a little bit longer? Can we
I don't know.
Can we work on that?
I've successfully replaced you last week, so I don't know.
Oh, you mean the little lizard man?
The little lizard man.
Isn't that his corpse over there?
Shush. I'll bring him back.
Okay.
I keep corpses around just in case.
Just ignore the blood on my sword and the decapitated everything about him. Just ignore it.
That's very way to end the episode on a gruesome note. Okay, guys, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye, everyone.
You've just been listening to DumpStat, a podcast presented by Horizon Kingdoms. Horizon Kingdoms is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition server that's free to play. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and join up on Discord to join in on a new adventure. For more DumpStat, be sure to find us on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe.